After we argued over dinner, my brother slammed me against a wall. A few weeks later, I woke up and did something they didn't anticipate. Do you believe that you are now so righteous? Jude's fist was curled around my sweater, his face inches from mine. Repeat it. Despite the pain emanating from where he had previously shoved me, I added again, Dad would be ashamed of what you've become. It wasn't just a slam that came next. Bone met plaster with a horrible snap, and then nothing. My sibling smashed me against a wall after we got into a fight over supper. Weeks later, I was awake. Hello, my name is Marjorie. I will share my story with you today. To hear more stories like this though, please like, share and subscribe before I go any farther. Jude was the epitome of what a big brother ought to be. I am 5 years older. He helped me with my algebra homework, showed me how to ride a bike, and was always there for me when I needed him at school. That's what made it so much more difficult to accept everything that transpired. When it all started, I was 26, went down while employed as a dental hygienist at a Cleveland suburban family office. Jude was a regional sales director for a pharmaceutical business and had just reached 31. Throughout college and the beginning of our professions, we remained close, getting together for supper every Tuesday at our childhood home with Dad. Those dinners became our means of preserving family customs after Mom's stroke 3 years prior. At 62, Dad was having more difficulties than he disclosed. He needed to fix the house, could not afford on his retirement pension, and I had observed him refusing to spend money on himself by staying warm all winter in the same tattered jacket. I said it over mashed potatoes and meatloaf that March Tuesday. I've been thinking, Dad, I said, putting down my fork. What if I temporarily moved back in? Divide the utilities and assist with upkeep. Behind his reading spectacles, Dad's eyes gleamed. I couldn't ask that of you, Marjorie, my dear. You don't inquire, I'm making an offering. I gave him a smile. In any case, my roommate will be relocating to Portland next month. Jude firmly put down his glass, causing the ice cubes to rattle. Not at all. The space became chilly. I turned to look at him, and so did Dad. Pardon me, I said. Instead of allowing him to continue living beyond his means, he should sell this house. Jude had a tense jaw and a throbbing vein near his temple. I've been telling him to sell the house for months. Relocate to one of those lovely retirement neighborhoods. The sentimentality is absurd. Sentimentality. I could feel my chest getting hotter. Jude, this is our house. Where? Marjorie, Mum is dead. He spoke in a chilly, flat tone. She won't return to this house. Dad winced as if he had been hit. My chair scraped the linoleum floor as I got to my feet. What on earth is the matter with you? Jude got up as well, all 6'2" of him. He had maintained his fitness by going to the gym for hours in between client appointments. What's the matter with me? Here, I'm the only one with practical thoughts. Are you aware of what this or how much is a place worth? He could spend the rest of his life in comfort. His father murmured softly, he's sitting right here. However, we couldn't hear him. I shot back. This isn't about money. This has to do with family and preservation. What is being preserved? Your bedroom from childhood. Marjorie, mature. Jude's face had reddened. He didn't get his way, and I remembered that same angry crimson from our childhood. At least I'm not attempting to force our father into a facility in order to obtain his equity. Like a lit match near gasoline, the allegation lingered in the air. Jude's face turned purple instead of red. Retract that. Why strike too close to home? I folded my arms. I've seen how you treat this place as if it were already yours. Jude, what's the plan? After your dad sells, you find yourself in need of a loan for the lakefront cabin your wife is constantly showcasing on Instagram. Jude, you moved around the table and came over to me. Dad stood with shaking hands. Dad, please keep the kids out of this. Jude didn't take his gaze away from me. Marjorie is going to discover the consequences of running her mouth. Jude, what are you going to do? Move me about as if we were children. Very mature for a 31-year-old. I'm alerting you. Dad would be embarrassed by your current state. Calm and deliberate, the words came forth. I hoped they would land. They did. Jude sprang forward and took hold of my sweater with both hands. His breath smelled strongly of the whiskey he had been consuming since arriving, and it was hot on my face. Do you believe that you are now so righteous? Jude's fist was curled around my sweater, his face inches from mine. Say it again. I said Dad would be ashamed of what you've become, I stated again, maintaining my composure, even though I was in pain from the place where he had already pushed me. It wasn't just a slam that came next. It was the terrible sound of plaster and bone colliding. Nothing after that. Dad and the police reports told me what transpired next. Jude had thrown me back so hard that my head passed through the wall of the dining room. It was a poor angle. Very terrible. My mother's favourite rag rug, which she had brought back from Vermont, was covered in blood as my skull broke and I fell like a stone. Jude stood motionless, staring at my limp body as if he was still processing what he had done, as Dad dialed 911. I'm fortunate to be alive, the paramedic added. Intracranial hemorrhage and a serious traumatic brain damage were the results of the impact. I was sent to emergency surgery. I spent 3 weeks in a coma. In the period, the world continued to revolve. That evening, Jude was taken into custody for severe assault. Jude requested that Jude sell his house, which Dad pledged as security for his bail. Nobody failed to notice the irony. Alex, my partner, essentially lived at the hospital. When I eventually opened my eyes, he was there, wearing the same Ohio State hoodie I'd given him for his birthday, his face drawn from sleep deprivation, and stubble covering his normally shaven jaw. Hey, my throat was as dry as sandpaper when I croaked. He started crying and struck the nurse. Pressed the call button several times. Marjorie, my God. God, oh God. The hours that followed were a haze of examinations, questioning about my memory, and lights flashing from doctors. Not much was the response. After that Tuesday evening, everything was gone, replaced by splitting headaches and nauseating double vision. My neurologist, Dr. Rodriguez, was direct about my illness. Miss Collins, you're incredibly fortunate. Although the surgery went well, you still have a long way to go. Traumatic brain damage has impacted your speech, memory processing, and motor skills. We anticipate major progress with therapy, but Alex squeezed my hand. However, complete recovery is not certain. You might be permanently deficient. Jude's hands could never grasp the force of the word permanent. After 2 more weeks in the hospital, I was admitted to Cleveland Heights Recovery Center for 3 months of inpatient therapy. The activities made sense to my inner dental hygienist. I had previously directed patients to PT specialists, but realizing and carrying it out were 2 different things. Trying to grip a toothbrush made my hands shake. My mouth and brain mixed up the words. I was worn out from walking to the restroom. Dad came every day, and he always looked older. In addition to my medical costs, the legal bills were growing. Jude's attorney pushed for a plea agreement. 3 years of probation and 2 years in prison. 5 years was what the prosecutor desired. One time, as he saw me struggle with a stress ball, the occupational therapist murmured, "I'm sorry," had given me. I ought to have put an end to it. I should have anticipated it. Frustrated at the effort required for every word, I managed to say, "Not your fault. He's also my son. I let you both down." Jude didn't come. Vanessa, his wife, came once. She stood like she may catch something in the doorway of my hospital room. A high-end purse held like a shield to her chest. She said, "Jude wanted me to tell you he's sorry," without looking directly at me. This whole thing has been really hard on him. In fact, Alex gave a sharp, acrid laugh. "Strict with him? Are you serious now?" Vanessa's cheeks turned red. "He might lose everything. His freedom, his job. Leave." I had a louder voice than I have in weeks. "Leave." Her heels clicked angrily as she walked out of the hospital hallway. 6 months after the assault, in September, the trial was scheduled. By then I had left rehab and was staying with Alex in his apartment because I was unable to support myself. My recuperation had reached a standstill. I could go on a walk without help. I was able to talk clearly most of the time, but my short-term memory was severely damaged, and I was constantly experiencing migraines. My lifeline became phone reminders and lists. I was unable to work. I was not up to the level of accuracy needed for oral hygiene. My hands were still shaking. I couldn't take the chance of injuring a patient because my depth perception was wrong. I was employed by the practice for 3 months before being let go. Even when I understood, the pain persisted. Jude's attorney made every effort to persuade me to drop the charges, even making an appearance one evening at Alex's apartment. "Your brother is ready to put this right, Miss Collins." Despite the August humidity, his pricey suit was spotless. Complete coverage for pain and suffering, lost income, and medical costs. We're talking about mid-six figures in return for Alex withdrawing the criminal charges, remaining protective as usual, and allowing this to stay a family problem. The months I spent in recovery, the job I had lost, and the persistent pounding behind my eyes were all on my mind. Then I remembered Dad, putting up his home for bail, about repercussions, about justice, no bargain. Be sensible, Miss Collins. No one benefits from a criminal conviction. Your household. When he put me through a wall, my family disbanded. Leave my house. The trial was cruel. I was portrayed by Jude's attorney as the aggressor, the ungrateful younger sister who had caused an unlucky outburst. In an attempt to create a pattern of conflict, they brought up every quarrel from childhood and every dispute from adolescence. However, the medical data was overwhelming. X-rays of my cracked skull, pictures of the hole in the wall, and my blood on the floor. My neurologist testified about the irreversible harm, the possibility that I would never again maintain good dental hygiene, and the everyday challenges I would encounter for the remainder of my life. Dad also testified, describing the attack in a voice that broke. There was no fight. Marjorie never held up a hand. Jude just lost it. The 911 call was played by the prosecutor, Dad's terrified voice, pleading for assistance, stating that his daughter was not breathing. Yes, there was a lot of blood. It was something I had never heard before. I sobbed in silence in the courtroom, while Alex held my hand. On the third day, Jude took the stand. Aside from the ankle monitor that protruded beneath his pants leg, he looked like a successful businessman in a modest suit with his hair styled. His narrative had changed. I had now shoved him first, intimidated him, and caused him to worry about his safety. He managed to shed a few tears and replied, "I never meant to hurt her that badly. My younger sister is named Marjorie. I adore her." He was shattered by the cross-examination. I arrived calmly with a casserole dish that Alex had prepared, according to security footage taken by Dad's neighbor. Jude had been texting Vanessa all evening about finally persuading Dad to sell, according to phone records. When the prosecutor brought up the physics, his initial accusation that I had intimidated him was refuted. Instead of moving forward as I would have if I had been moving toward him, I had been thrown backward. The jury spent 4 hours deliberating, guilty of serious bodily injury resulting from aggravated assault. Jude was sentenced to 4 years in state jail by the judge, who cited the seriousness of his injuries and his lack of regret. At the verdict, Jude's face turned pale. With mascara streaming down her cheeks, Vanessa let out a loud cry. For the first time since that evening, he turned to face me as they took him away in handcuffs. "I hope you're happy," he said. "How could I be glad that my brother was going to prison, that our family was broken up, and that I had a headache every morning before going to bed? I wasn't. The aftermath was quick and brutal. Jude's employer fired him the day after his conviction because it turned out that attacking family members was against their code of conduct. Vanessa filed for divorce within a month, returning to her parents' Connecticut home because she no longer wanted to be associated with the Collins name. Their house went into foreclosure because Jude was incarcerated and unable to work, and the lakefront cabin he'd been planning never. Instead, his assets went toward my civil suit settlement and legal fees. Dad and I grew closer throughout it all. I did move back home, not just to help with bills, but because we needed each other. He drove me to appointments when my headaches made it unsafe for me to drive, helped me with my exercises, and said, "I'm proud of you," one evening as we watched Jeopardy together. It was a simple pleasure that didn't tax my injured brain. Alex and I got engaged that Christmas, and we had a small celebration at Dad's house. He had been my pillar of support through everything, never faltering or making me feel like a burden, and even after I twice forgot our anniversary, my recovery proceeded slowly. I found work as a medical insurance coordinator, which had less physical labor and more flexible hours. My occupational therapist had assisted me in creating strategies to deal with the cognitive demands, but it wasn't the career I'd originally planned, but it paid the bills and allowed me to assist others in navigating the same medical system that had saved my life. The job was remote, which was ideal because I could work at my own pace, take breaks when necessary, and still contribute. Jude served 3 years of his 4-year sentence, released early for good behavior, and Dad visited him once a month, but I never did. Some bridges. I don't hate my brother, but I also can't forgive him, not for the assault, which was an inexcusable moment of rage, but for trying to lie about it, for trying to paint me as the aggressor, and for never once truly apologizing, which killed any chance of reconciliation. The house Jude wanted Dad to sell, so It's not just a building, it's evidence that some things are more important than money. 4 years later, my headaches are manageable, and although I still have bad days when I can't speak or my hands won't cooperate, I've built a life around my limitations. Dad and I fixed it up together, me holding flashlights and sorting screws when my hands were too shaky for detail work. We repainted the dining room, patched the wall, and replaced Mum's rug. Sometimes I wonder what Jude thinks about when he's alone. Does he replay that night like I do? Does he realize that his grab for Dad's assets cost him everything? His career, his marriage, his freedom, his family. The irony is perfect, really. He wasn't invited to the backyard under the maple tree Mum planted when Jude and I were kids. Vanessa sent a card, oddly enough, congratulating Jude and apologizing for that hospital visit, to downsize, to liquidate, to put money before memory. Instead, his actions caused his own downsizing. From executive to ex-con, from suburban house to studio apartment, from family get-togethers to exile, I've learned to find joy in small victories, like finishing a yoga class without shaking, remembering a whole conversation, or getting through a day without taking pain medication. These aren't the accomplishments I once imagined, but they're mine, earned through months of taxing therapy, and my career, my independence, and my unwavering faith in family ties were all taken away by the brain injury, but it also made me realize who really mattered. Dad, who mortgaged his beloved house for bail money and then supported me during my trial and recovery. Alex, who stayed and held my hand through numerous doctor's appointments. Alex, who learned to read my face when words wouldn't come. And Alex, who suggested that he knew our life together would be different than he'd imagined. My roommate Christine from college, who flew in from Seattle twice to help Dad renovate the house. My neighbor Mrs. Kowalski, who brought soup every Sunday and never asked questions when I was having a bad day. Friends who adjusted to my new limitations without making me feel inferior. Sarah from work, who came every week with magazines and gossip. Jude, who revealed himself too, but not in the way he intended. When pressed, he chose violence over words, lies over accountability, money over family. The brother who taught me how to ride a bike was gone, replaced by a stranger who saw our childhood home as nothing more than equity to be extracted. Some people say I should forgive him because holding on to anger only hurts me. Perhaps they are right, but forgiveness requires repentance. Jude has never really apologized. Not for the assault, not for lying, not for trying to buy his way out of consequences. His prison sentence was justice, but his current life, that's karma. I don't need retribution. Jude's actions caused his downfall, which is as inevitable as gravity. He slammed me into a wall, but in doing so, he destroyed his own life. The wall has been patched and repainted, so you wouldn't know violence occurred there. However, Jude's reputation, his relationships, his future, those can't be so easily fixed. Some walls, once broken, stay broken. Last month, a woman approached me after one of my talks, crying. "My brother did something similar," she whispered. "I've been considering dropping the charges, but after hearing you, I decided to become an advocate of sorts. I speak at brain injury support groups, sharing my story and giving hope to people going through their own recoveries. You deserve justice, and so does he. The kind that comes with consequences and hopefully growth, and sometimes that's exactly as it should be." Dad turned 66 last month. Alex, Sarah, and Mrs. Kowalski were there, and we celebrated with chocolate cake, Mum's recipe, in the kitchen where everything fell apart 4 years ago. We laughed and told stories, and Dad didn't mention Jude once. After everyone had gone home, I discovered him in the kitchen, the dining room, gazing at the wall that we had both fixed. "Do you ever consider him?" Dad's voice was quiet as I said, "Every day. He's still my son, but he's not the boy I raised." "No," I agreed, "he's not. Do you think he'll ever understand what he threw away?" I asked quietly. "I think he knows, but knowing and accepting are different things." Jude always struggled with that second part. Dad nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, I've started writing down my feelings. I used to say that about him. Jude knows what's right," she'd say, "but his pride gets in the way of doing it." It was the most profound thing I'd heard about my brother in years. Pride, that was it. Pride made him see Dad's house as a financial burden instead of a home. Pride made him lie on the witness stand. Pride made him lash out when I called him on it. The good memories from before, the ones I still have, the times Jude taught me to swim at Lake Erie, the family road trips to Niagara Falls, the time he confronted a bully who was harassing me in middle school. Those memories don't erase what Jude did, but they are also part of the story. The tragedy isn't just what Jude did, but what he became. The gradual deterioration of his character that led to that point. the decisions, no matter how small, that changed a protective big brother into someone capable of such violence. My therapist says that this viewpoint is healthy, that I'm finding a way to hold both truths at once, that Jude was once good, and that who he became was unforgivable. It's taken 4 years to get here. If your own sibling became violent over money or property, would you file charges, or would family loyalty force you to shield them from the repercussions of their actions? I can't answer that for anyone else, but I can tell you what I learnt. Sometimes love means letting justice take its course. I'll probably never know if Jude ever does that work, but I know that I'm still here. I wake up every morning in my parents' house, make coffee in the kitchen where it all happened, walk past the repaired wall without flinching, go to work, assist patients with their insurance claims, and return home to Alex. Sometimes shielding someone from consequences isn't love at all, it's enabling. Jude needed to face what he'd done, not just to me but to himself. After everything, that feels like victory enough. Some walls remain destroyed, but we learn to rebuild ourselves stronger. This is my life even if I planned it.